How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Contingent on You Listening podcast. I am your co-host, Isaiah Hernandez, and to my left, he's back for another episode.
Still have the interim tag on my title here.
Mr. Jasen Schrock. How are you doing, Jason?
Good. Isaiah, how you doing?
Good. Did you do your daily reading of Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
I actually took my medium kids to, my great kids to Disney yesterday. First time at Disneyland.
Just kidding, guys. It's not that podcast.
Not rich or poor. Just
yeah, exactly.
No,
not
we had
that
a great
type
time.
of podcast.
Great time
Awesome.
here. Yep.
Great to hear. Good week?
Great week.
Awesome.
Great week. Yep.
Speaking of great, our special guest for this week, Mr. Adavid Broden. How are you doing, man?
Man, we're doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
David.
Jason, give me the rundown on Adavid.
Well, here's the probably the most important thing you guys need to know is that he is originally from the Great Lakes state of Michigan.
Go Blue.
Go Blue.
All right.
And for all you Michigan State fans out, we're not trying to offend, but David's a Michigan guy. He's even got maize and blue on today on his outfit. So
came prepared.
Representing.
Absolutely.
And they got the little gold tie. Like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actually, that might be a good place to take off here.
Yeah.
Adavid, how did you find yourself in Southern California all the way from the Midwest?
Believe it or not, it was my wife. Like most of us, our wives tend to take us places. We got married actually in Riverside.
Okay.
And immediately afterwards, we were on our way to Atlanta. We spent about a year and a half in Atlanta. And then she was like, listen, we're going back to California. And I was like, no, I don't do earthquakes. So we're not going.
Is she from California?
She's not. She's Filipino, grew up in Southeast Alaska.
Oh, okay.
She came down Southern California for college.
Gotcha.
And kind of pulled her whole family with her and myself included. And then after about a year and a half in Atlanta, came out here, and I was in the construction industry. So about 10 years of that.
Mm-hmm.
Tried to get into the same industry, didn't pan out, and saw the sign on the side of a building, Century 21, said, get your real estate license. And I was like, well, let's give this a go.
How long ago was that?
So now we're looking at 8 years ago.
All right.
Wow.
So maybe that's a good piece of advice. We sometimes see people that are relocating or getting started in their career in a market that is not where they grew up. Obviously having a sphere of influence, people, where your parents grew up, where you went to high school, where you went to college, all your friends,
Right.
those turn into your first clients in the beginning of it all. How did you get started without really knowing a ton of people where you were relocating to here in Southern California?
So I was given the advice that I should do an open house a week and I would sell a house a month. So I did a lot of open houses.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't really pan out that way initially, but of course it still worked out at the end of the day.
You still picked up some clients?
I did.
Some contacts at least?
The first home that I sold was from a flip that our broker was doing. I was just holding it open for him, and those guys ended up purchasing that home. I met them through the open house.
Nice.
And from there, we just kind of got the ball rolling. But to answer your question in regards to how do you start, you don't have a sphere. And it was just, you have to jump out of your shell and really just be open to have that conversation with anyone and everyone. Some folks, you've got maybe a group that you're a part of, maybe a church group or something like that. You can use those as an opportunity for growth. Maybe your neighborhood. You go. Believe it or not, we don't have to close our garage and go inside and not talk to anybody. We can go outside, knock on a door, and meet our neighbors and maybe grow your sphere that way as well. Family was a big thing for me, not having my family out here, but my wife's family, and kind of using them to propel my business as well.
Okay.
Very cool.
So use your wife's family.
She brought me out here, right? So.
Awesome.
I think he's already laid claim to that family. You might have to go find your own family if you're out there looking.
Damn it.
So, Adavid, give us a little bit of sort of a day in the life of how you go about your business. What's important to you? What have you found to be some of your areas of success?
Great question. So about 2 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be a part of Greg Harrelson's training course.
Oh, great.
And so our broker brought him in, and he was talking about basically the routine of the day. And he said you should be at the gym by 5 a.m. and you should be at the office by 8 a.m. Mm-hmm. And so I adopted that mindset. So it was 4:30 in the morning. I wake up. I'm at the gym by 5. I'm home by 6:30. And then from there, I've got an hour to prep to be in the office by 8 o'clock, because from 8 to 10 is lead gen. I need to be on the phone. I need to be writing note cards. I need to be doing something to have a conversation with someone to grow that business, because after 10 o'clock, the day tends to get away from you. Phone calls are coming in, appointments need to be set, so on and so forth. So that first 2 hours of the day is the critical piece to be able to really get the business moving. And to speak to it, how it actually worked is I did okay as an agent, but my business literally doubled that first year once I implemented that coming into the office, and then moving into the second year of that, it has doubled again. Maybe even going to triple, from just starting the day strong, getting into the office on time, most of the time before any other agents are there, so there's no distractions. And I think that's what tends to happen often in the office,
right,
is the distractions take place. 10, 11 o'clock, people are talking whatever, then the next thing you know, you're at lunch, and then something happens and you got to leave work early, it's 3 o'clock, and there's your day. And you're like, did I really work today?
Yeah. So consistency is key. You know, you can't just do it for 1 week or, you know, I mean, you've been doing this for how many years now since you've
8 years.
Shout out to Greg Harrelson for bringing up our boy Adavid.
Yeah, another great Century 21 broker.
Yes.
So it sounds also, what I heard out of that is one, you had a coach or you had a mentor or somebody that was kind of helping guide you or giving you what I think is the second point I heard is a pretty consistent, to Isaiah's point, a consistent process, something to almost like a playbook, right, of how this works. Like, what is a formula that has worked for others and can it work for me, and plugging in and finding that right mix. And I think 3, like just really being professional about it, treating it like a real job, like a real career, like a real business, right? It's, you know, it's your business and you want to treat it like it's your business. So that's really good advice there. So what else, Adavid? Give us a sense of, you do your prospecting on a consistent basis. Once you are starting to work with people, you know, what's a day in the life of working with clients and you, and how does that work?
It begins by asking good questions. I have found that I was nervous when I first started. I was actually, believe it or not, I was afraid to take the up desk calls. Like they were like, so sit the up desk, calls will come in, you'll see if it's a buyer or seller, whatever the case may be. And I'm like, I'm not answering that phone. I don't know what to say. If they ask a question, I don't have the right answers. And so as I've grown in my career and I've learned to ask good questions and take good notes, that's where I've been able to kind of grow. And going back to kind of what Greg taught us is just having a script, so to speak, of questions that I'm asking, because I want to get to know this person that I'm on the phone with to really see how I can help them achieve whatever goal it is they're seeking to do, whether they're buying a home or they're selling a home, investment, whatever the case may be, just asking those right questions. So for me,
what were some of those right questions?
Some of those right questions. Well, first and foremost, it all starts very easily, I think, let's use the equation or the idea that someone's moving. Well,
okay.
What and the question that I've changed, that I've taken out is why. I don't use why. I use what's, how's more so, because why is kind of a negative connotation from what I understand. Right. So what's the reasoning for us to be making a move to X?
Okay.
And then allowing them to speak. And then listening in on that. So conversation could be, we're moving to Florida from California. What's causing you and your family to move to Florida? Well, my mom is there. I've got 2 brothers, but they're not really able to take care of mom. She's in a space now where she can't do it on her own. And so we need to be close to her. It's going to be great because also, you know, she's going to be closer to the grandkids. Well, we don't get to see her as often, maybe once or twice a year. Gotcha. So as I'm listening to that conversation, I say, so we always go back to what will be the motivation. If we ever have any hurdles moving forward, well, remember, we want to be close to mom so we can help her through whatever health issues that she's working with and so forth. And also that she's close to the grandbabies, so everybody's together as a family. Okay. So going back to that motivation, asking those good questions. We've got a whole script, of course, that we ask as far as if someone's selling a home and how we get information so that we're properly prepared when I sit down at a listing presentation. I'm not green and I can bring the right information to them so that we can get, again, all the questions, or as many as possible. You can never get necessarily every question answered, but as many possible questions answered at that first appointment as possible.
Gotcha. Isaiah, I mean, I love that he said he was afraid to answer the phone first. Does he look like he's a guy that's not very confident in what he's doing? No. Look at that. I mean, like that's actually really good because, you know, we all need that sometimes. Like we all have those moments of indecision, or are we doing the right thing? Are we saying the right thing? And I know Adavid's a confident guy in life in general, and to be able to go through that process and really kind of push through that and let that confidence shine is really, really cool. You mentioned listing presentations. Obviously, right now in the market, I think, and Isaiah, you can probably speak to this as well.
I was just going to say, it's like that Saturday Night Live skit with Keenan Thompson where they're doing the "What Up with That."
Yeah,
and he said listing presentation, and right in my head, I started doing the little humming. Like,
yeah, what up with that?
Yeah, David's like, what's going on right
Yeah, no,
anyway,
that's
sorry, inside joke.
No, yeah, and that actually is a really, I think, an important piece right now. Listings are king right now, right? Getting in front of those people that are thinking about selling, really educating them on that. I've seen Adavid in front of a large group of people talking about his listing presentation, and maybe just give us a couple of pieces of advice on how to put a good presentation together, how to be confident in front of those sellers, and when you're sitting across at the kitchen table, what's going through your mind.
Give us all the secrets.
All the secrets.
All the secrets. So, as we mentioned initially, it starts with asking those really good discovery questions in the beginning so that when I sit down with a client, so like one of the things that's important for me is how much do they owe in a home? Because when I sit down with a client, it's important for me to know how much they owe so I can provide in that listing presentation a net sheet. So I can tell them what they're going to be able to profit, what they're going to be able to put in their pocket at the close of that sale. So
and from my experience, that's 9 times out of 10, that's all they care about is what am I walking away with? You know what I mean? Or when that's what they want to see, you know?
Yeah. They want to make sure that you can deliver it to them.
Right.
Exactly, for sure. And so after we've asked all those questions, we provide what we call a pre-listing package.
Okay.
And the pre-listing package, I try to get out within 24 hours of my conversation that I initially had with them. It's put together, about 90% of it's already done. The only thing that I'm really changing in there is going to be the photo on the front of their home, the address that's there, their name, and the city that it's respective to. Apart from that, they're all kind of a template.
Are you including comps in this yet or not yet?
So really good question there. I used to.
Okay.
But I have found that it's already a lot of content that's there. For most people, it's too much to digest.
Okay.
So that I bring with me when I come for the appointment.
In person. You save it for in person.
In person. The majority of what they're going to see in that pre-listing presentation is our marketing plan. Because there's really two strong reasons why I think you're going to hire a real estate professional to sell your home. One's going to be great marketing, but second to none to that is also going to be negotiations. Can you really negotiate on your behalf to get your top dollar and everything that you and your family are going to need?
Right.
So the main piece of that is going to be our marketing and how we differentiate ourselves from whoever else may be our competition. Some other things that are in there is going to be the difference between a full-time agent, a mega team, and maybe a professional agent. I consider myself a professional agent because I'm not a mega team.
That's a great breakdown, I think, because it's fair because they're probably interviewing not just you, they're interviewing probably like 3 to 4 other agents, and those guys chances are going to fall into that category.
I'm going to guess that Adavid's one that hopes there's other agents out there so he can laugh at him when he gets that listing.
Right.
sees him around town, he can point at him and say, I got that listing.
Exactly.
The competition brings out the best in us.
There you go, right? We're all competitive here in this business. So let me ask, this is something that I think that comes up sometimes, especially if they are interviewing more than one person to list their home. What types of objections do you hear when you're sitting across the kitchen table, trying to get the paperwork signed? Or what are some things that people might give pause, or do they ask? What are some of maybe the pushback questions they get from you?
So the number one that always comes up is going to be, how much is this costing them? It's going to be the commission. And so what I've found is that, of course, in presenting that pre-listing package, I'm able to provide value. So when you provide value first, it can substantiate your fees or costs for the work that you're going to be doing. So you see this whole package, it goes you through how I'm going to market your property, how we're going to get it all done. And then something that I feel like a lot of agents tend to leave out based on the conversations I've had is there's actually a breakdown of commission, broker compensation, whatever you want to call it. I call it commission in our listing or our pre-listing presentations, breaking down. There's 2 sides to this. And even what those 2 sides cover, because it's not just half over here, half over here. Yes, well, on the listing side, I have all of these marketing expenses. I have brokerage fees, and then there's, of course, what I'm going to eventually get paid at the end of this. And then, of course, we're breaking down on the other side where we've got the broker fees, and most likely the buyer has, what they're going to make from that. So that the consumer or the home seller can see that, no, I'm not just a guy who's going to slap a sign in the front yard and then walk away with this grand old check that is supposedly going to be in my pocket, right? No, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and it's spread. So the pie is cut up in a lot of pieces at the end of the day. So that's in there as well. So that's one of the objections that I tend to see on a regular basis. And believe it or not, I don't see that agents are actually explaining it, because when I explain it, it's like there's actually two sides, because they're like, well, wait a minute, I thought it was just 3% or I thought it was 6% or whatever it was. It's like, well, let's help you understand that and put it in writing so that it's clear.
And has this helped you avoid the whole lower your commission?
You know, believe it or not, it has. We were sitting down. I had a mentee that was with me on a listing presentation, and we were going through everything, and we presented it right there and went over our fees and that are associated with the sale of a home. And there was no question whatsoever. And she, at the end of it, she was like, does that always happen? And I said, well, not always, but when you provide great quality service, you've got a product that people can understand and make sense, they're going to go with it.
Yeah,
So-
it's having the confidence to know the what you are worth in that transaction for them, and the fact that at the end of the day, it's going to give them peace of mind. And typically, if it's negotiated correctly, and we'll talk about negotiation maybe in a second. I'd love to hear how you negotiate and how that works in your world. But I think they can, when they see the value in something, then the cost of it doesn't necessarily come up, right? So
totally see that. I guess Adavid's been doing this for 8 years now, so you built a good book of business and consistency. So you can, I feel like, I don't want to say take risks on that. I think as a newer agent like myself, one thing that I've always been cautious of as I've gotten these contracts signed is like, I want to go for that 6%, but at the same time, I don't want to turn them off right away, because they could be like, 6%, so-and-so is offering me 5%. And then now I have to face that hurdle. So I go a little, I tend to be a little more conservative, I guess, because I do worry, like, hey, I need that paycheck. Like, I can't. You know what I mean? I want to avoid that up as possible. Eventually, I'd like to get to a spot where I can do 6%, and it won't be a big deal of having that objection where I can be like, well, here's why and whatever, and then that's what. Just some little insight from my perspective of a newer guy.
Yeah, and I think some of that actually comes from, again, the confidence of doing it, being prepared,
right.
knowing your value,
Yep.
going into it, having that sales pipeline. So again, Adavid, you're prospecting every day, right? You're prospecting. Your pipeline gets bigger and bigger that way. The deeper that pipeline gets, then the easier it is, right, to be able to go into a meeting and knowing that my time is valuable. I've got a lot of people that want to work with me.
For sure.
I'd love that to be you too, but
For
here's
sure.
what it's going to take.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about, you talked about two things. I want to talk about negotiation, and I also, you talked about maybe some of the ways that you might go above and beyond as you're presenting yourself. Like, is there maybe marketing tips you've got, or extra things that you bring to that pre-packet that you're selling to the potential seller that you feel kind of separates you from the rest?
So let's talk about negotiations for a quick second, because a negotiation is just a really good conversation of listening and mirroring. So for those of you who are listening, maybe you've read the book, maybe you haven't read the book, but it was kind of a game changer for me. It was Never Split the Difference. And don't ask me to quote the author, because I forgot. But
we'll fill in the tag at the bottom.
Yeah.
Grab that. Huge is just listening and, again, mirroring what you see there. But listening is so key. So, for instance, let's talk about this whole negotiation, one that we just closed. So let's talk about something that just happened. So get a client who, I represent the seller, and we've got a buyer. And so they go do their home inspection, and they come out with a list of 37 items that they feel that need to be addressed on the home. And then they say, well, to make everything go away, we're just going to say, reduce the sales price by $10,000 and we're good to go. And so we had to ask the question, well, you didn't provide for us an estimate for any of this work. You just threw a flat number out into space. So then what we had to do is say, I need you to go back and I need you to provide me an estimate for that work to be done. So then they provided us an estimate for the work to be done. They came back, believe it or not, $13,000 worth of work to be done, which is fine. Again, we already know the condition of the property, but I go through this with a fine-tooth comb with my client. And so we're able to cross off literally everything except for $1,000 worth of things that are health and safety in that home. So I told my client, I said, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to explain to them why. We're going to put it together in an email and say, this is what we're willing to cover and this is why. And all of these other items, unfortunately, the home is sold in its as-is condition. And you believe it or not, they came back and were like, well, I guess that's what it's going to be. So my client, and this comes for a good, strong agent who is able to have those conversations and put things in writing, to be able to go back to their client as opposed to saying, well, it's $10,000. So like, I guess we need to do that because, you want to sell this home. We only had one offer on it. So it wasn't like we could fall back on another backup offer, but how do we still make this work for my client to close this so we don't have to start the whole process all over again. And it was having that conversation, but then having experience as well to know that I'm going to get probably a buyer's agent who's just going to throw a number at me because this isn't the first time it's happened. And so I'm going to be able to tell them to go back and do your due diligence and bring us back a number. Because if you can't bring us back a number, we just can't agree to just some arbitrary number that you created in your mind of what you think needs to be done. And so it works out in our client's best interest. So negotiation, listening, and going back to what you said, confidence. Because you may not necessarily have the experience, but when you speak with confidence as well, because when I talk to other agents, like, this is what's going to happen, this is why this is going to happen, and so they kind of puts them on their heels a little bit, which is what you kind of want, all right, when you're negotiating, for them to say, well, you know what, I think someone might be a little smarter, a little savvy, more savvy than me on this. And again, at the end of the day, it's my goal to get the best for my client. That's who I represent. And so if you're not able to negotiate on your client's behalf to get them the best, unfortunately, that's on you. So I'm perfecting my craft over here so that I can continue to keep that pipeline going and continue to do business.
That's great. It sounds
Solid.
like, having a plan going in, doing your homework, making sure you have all of the information to make educated decisions. That's a big part of negotiation. And I think, as you just said, having the confidence and instilling that confidence in your clients that this is the path, this is the direction we're going, this is the plan we've got, the strategy, right? So perfect.
And I'll just touch on that because I went back to some of my recent reviews, and one of the areas that I used to miss in was actually negotiations. And I was like, I'm doing a really good job, but I'm coming up short on that negotiation star. And I was like, what can we do to do better? So again, we went back to reading and again, having those conversations, role playing, scripting it out so that I could be in a position when it actually happened to provide the level of service that my client was deserving of.
Very nice. Any other last minute listing presentation tips you can give us? For me, because I'd like to hear more.
No, absolutely. For sure. Let's go to the comps because you asked, where were the comps? So let's dive into that a little bit. Comps there's a lot of data out there. And so you have things like Zillow and Truly, and I had a conversation with the client then he's like, so Zillow's telling me my house is worth X. Well,
you always get those estimates. They always get in the way.
A year and a half ago, of course, we know CEO of Zillow came out and says you can't really trust those numbers. Right. So when you have that information, you tell them you can't really trust those numbers. And I tend to actually bring the Zestimates with me from time to time and be like, yeah, so I know what's going on. So I know what you've seen. So I'm not going to be caught off guard. But this is reality. And we like to use a comparison of an appraisal in our market analysis. And I tell my client this, you have to sell the home twice. You have to first sell it to the buyer, and then you have to sell it to the bank, and that's going to be the appraiser. And so it needs to come in at value or really close to it. Yeah. And appraiser is going to go 20% larger, 20% smaller as far as the home. So that's what I'm going to use for home size when I bring together those numbers. And I'm going to use a small amount of homes. I've seen where you can get 10, 15 homes. That's too much data for someone to digest. I like to keep my number about 6. 6 homes we can look at that are going to be the closest apples to apples of what their home looks like. And we're going to look at those. And then at the end of the day, I'm going to ask my client, of these 6 homes that you're looking at right here, which one closest resembles your home? Because they'll think, well, my home is worth X, Y, Z. And say, well, I think the one that's with all the upgrades. Okay, so it has a remodeled kitchen. Did we remodel this kitchen? well, we painted the cabinets.
Are you doing like, what's the time frame you're pulling these comps? 6 months, 12 months?
Great question as well. So appraisers, again, typically work in that 6-month sphere. Okay. So we're going to go with 6 months. Okay. And if I can get anything closest to that sale as possible, if I can narrow it down to 3 or 2, I'm going to go with those, the ones that most recently sold. Something that's important also for agents when you're on that listing presentation, typically you'll see homes that are pending. So you want to call those homes because they're out there and they could have potentially had an appraisal done. Something could have happened with that property that you want to be aware of when you're sitting down with that prospective seller as to what's really happening in this market right now. Because we could have a sale that's 20, 30,000 above everything else sold and it recently appraised and it's a model match. We want to know that data. And then if the homes match up, then we know that if we list at whatever price point that may be, we know we're not listing high, later going to have to make a reduction. We've got established data that we're going to be able to use later to substantiate value.
Okay.
Wow, Isaiah, I mean, if you listen to the way that Adavid's talking, if he was sitting across the kitchen table for me and I was deciding who I was going to have list in my home, all of that extra above and beyond stuff that he's doing for that
100%.
client, I would
100%.
sign on the dotted line. Guys, I think I have probably the most important follow-up question here for Adavid. The University of Michigan football, NCAA champions in 2024?
Absolutely.
All right, I love it.
I don't know. Isn't Nah, never mind. I'll say it for another time. Another
That's
day.
another
Day,
podcast.
guys.
Yeah,
Another
yeah.
day, guys.
Adavid, thanks so much for being
Thank you,
here.
man.
Yeah, this was great stuff. For all you agents
Appreciate
out
it.
there, you want to learn how to do a great listing presentation, listen to this podcast. Really good stuff right there.
For sure. Thank you, everybody. Oh, and did I forget to do some house cleaning? I
think you
did.
did.
Let's do so. Let's get those likes and subscribes up, please. We
Click,
appreciate
click,
you
click,
guys
click, click.
listening. David, he's our one listener right now. So, and we had him on the podcast. So, just to show that you guys can come on the podcast too. All right.
Exactly. If you
like
like
or
or click, then
Like or click.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.